How is it that independent countries throughout the world who developed their culture and language independent to one another name their 7 days of the week after the 7 planets? In the ancient world, the movement of planets and luminaries became an important aspect to the lives of the people living in those times. Not only did these celestial bodies influence their imaginations and conscious connection to nature or divine creation, they worked out that these bodies could be used to measure time. As a consequence, many ancient cultures adopted an artificially created week in order to maintain a healthy balance between productivity and rest. Over time, through trade routes and interactions, a standardized 7-day week was adopted. Furthermore, as the 7 planets represented various deities in different cultures, the planets naturally became the benchmark for names of the 7 days. The ancient Babylonians believed that each of these celestial bodies was one of their gods. Ancient Greek astrologers became fascinated by the writings of their Babylonian forebears and created their own version of the Babylonian 7-day week, substituting the Babylonian deities with their own. However, these names were mainly used by astrologers, not the everyday people, most of whom could not read or write. Around this time, the ancient Romans were using an 8-day week, promoting 7 days of labor and 1 day of rest. However, when the Romans annexed Greece, they also adopted the 7-day week in the same planetary order, exchanging Greek deities for Roman ones. The last day became the new day free from labor, devoted instead to trade and commerce. At some point, the Romans came into contact with Germanic people who also, for practical reasons, adopted this 7-day week, renaming the days after their own deities, once again keeping the same planetary order. Among these tribes were the Anglo-Saxons, who later became the English. As time went by, these names evolved into what we see today. When Christianity became the dominant religion of the Roman Empire, Dies Saturni, the traditional Roman day of commerce, was synchronized with the Jewish Sabbath. Thus, it was no longer a day of trade and commerce, but instead a day of rest. However, church services were not held on Saturday because early Christians sought to segregate themselves from the Jews. During the 5th century AD, Emperor Constantine was a devotee of the sun god Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. However, after his victory in the Battle of Milvian Bridge, he chose the Christian god as his new personal deity. As a consequence, changed the name of Dies Solis to Dies Domini, meaning Day of the Lord. Over the years, the English names of the days have been challenged by various interests who have tried to rename them to a numbering system, all unsuccessful. Today, although the days are named after pagan deities referencing the planets, most people are unaware of this. Languages which adopted the numbering system either chose Sunday as their first day or Monday, depending upon their religious orientation. For example, the Hebrew language of the Jews regarded the Sabbath, Saturn's day, as their most sacred day. Therefore, Sunday became the first day in Hebrew. The Persians and the Greeks also regarded Sunday as the first day, together with many other languages including Arabic, Turkish, and Vietnamese. Languages which adopted Monday as the first day include many who regard Sunday as their sacred day of rest. This includes Russia and many countries throughout Eastern Europe. China is also a country where Monday is regarded as the first day of the week. The East Asian naming system paralleled that of the Latin languages, ordering the days after the planets. It is believed that China, through various trade routes, had adopted the 7-day week from the Latin system as early as the 4th century AD. The Chinese naming system, based upon the 7 planets, found its way to Japan and other East Asian countries. However, when the Qing dynasty came to an end, replaced by the Republic of China, a numbering system was adopted to replace the old planetary-based one. It is also important to point out the correlation between the planets and various monotheistic religions. Mercury is the planet favored by Buddhism. Buddha is Sanskrit for the planet Mercury. With Wednesday, or Mercury Day, being the 3rd day of the week, it is no surprise to see Buddhists perform 3 prostrations holding 3 sticks of incense before walking around the temple 3 times. Jupiter is the planet favored by Christians, known as Jupiter in Rome and Zeus in ancient Greece. Therefore, it is no coincidence to see Zeus or Jesus becoming the personified ambassador of the Christian faith. Being the 4th day of the week, we see the 4-pointed cross with the Christ on top of the cross. Venus is the planet favored by Islam. They pray 5 times a day and adhere to the 5 pillars of Islam. Their first prayer meeting is called the Fajr. It takes place just before dawn when Venus appears on the horizon at Mecca. Saturn is the planet favored by Judaism. Being the 6th day of the week, it is no surprise to see Jews using the number 6 in many of their myths, writings, and legends. So why this particular planetary order? Dio Cassius, a 3rd century Roman historian, gives us an explanation. Each hour over a 7-day period was assigned a planet in order of their sidereal period as measured in Babylonian times. Consequently, the names of each day came from the planet after whom the first hour was named.